In November 2021, Calgary UX celebrated more than a decade since the formation of the community. To honor the group's origins, we interviewed 4 past community organizers to recollect its history and capture the vision for its future. Chad Fournier, Megan Armstrong, Andrew Wright, and Murray Thompson. All interviews were done remotely by Marissa Stambene. Describe how did you got involved in Calgary UX?
I wouldn't say that I'm the founder of Calgary UX, but I think I certainly took it and evolved it from the earlier days of more of a ragtag group of people that were just kind of getting together sporadically. The first event that I went to was actually back at the end of January of 2009. And that was, there was a couple Scotts involved. Scott Anderson was talking about interactive prototypes and sort of the emergence of Acture at that point. Scott Baldwin was also there, and he was sort of presenting the opposing view about sketching user experiences, and a lot of it based on his recent reading of the Bill Buxton book, Sketching User Experiences. Dave Robertson was also there, and he was preaching the merits of rapid design labs. And then Gene Smith was also a guest speaker from Inform in Edmonton. So it was quite the inspiring night. And I asked at that point, like, oh, this is something really cool. How can I be a part of it and contribute in some way? And then really from there, what I learned was that it was, they just kind of got together for lunch kind of once a month and wanted to talk about events and things that we could do. And then from there, it was around June, I think, that Scott ended up moving to Vancouver, Scott Baldwin. And so I kind of took things over from there, took ownership of the website that we had back then, and then just started planning more events that I was interested in. So book clubs. There was some related to the book club, there was Boozer Experience where we'd get together and just share some laughs and talk about stuff at a local pub. And then we started to do some design slams, a little more active activities and social networking. And it sort of took off from there. And then we just added more people to the organizing committee throughout as we went.
Yeah, I was involved for probably almost 10 years, not quite. I can remember my very first Cal UX event was at M Media, and it was a video screening, like a UX or a design movie screening that was run there. And it was a really small group, and I can recall going to a few events then, and that was probably in 2009, I think that would have been. And then I got involved shortly thereafter, helping with just organizing events. From probably 2010 to 2019, I was pretty involved.
So yeah, I didn't start as an organizer. I came from Edmonton back in 2012. And when I lived in Edmonton, I was part of UX Edmonton and one of the organizers there. And we ran a lot of community events, large speaking events, and small meetups where lots of people got together from the community. And it was really vibrant and energetic, and I really enjoyed it. But like I said, when I moved to Calgary, I didn't have that. I gave up my post with UX Edmonton and started looking for something similar in the community here. And a colleague of mine at the time, Megan Armstrong, introduced me to Calgary UX, I think. I'll give her credit regardless. She deserves it. She was one of the organizers. And there's kind of a natural transition for the leaders of the group or the community sort of motivators to turn over every couple of years. And when that opportunity came up, I got stoked because I had been attending the meetups and getting to know the community, and I put my name in the hat to take over as one of them. And I was granted the position. So I was an organizer for Calgary UX for I think about 5 years actually. And we ran lots of different types of events and had lots of different turnout and met lots of different people, lots of faces come through. And turned over that position just a couple of years ago. My schedule wasn't permitting it, and there were new people with lots of energy, really excited about coming in and taking the reins. So I was happy to turn that over.
So I used to work up in Northern Alberta, and I started UX up there in the role I was in. And it was essentially I was a UX team of one, and I've went to conferences and seen other folks that way, but I never really had in my community necessarily folks that were hey, these are some other folks like me doing what I'm doing and interested in what I'm interested in that professional side. So when I came down in 2011 to Calgary, there was this UX book club. And so I joined that, started going to more of that social side of things. And yeah, that's how I got involved. And then just throughout time, got a bit more involved in helping things get put together. And then long time, but it's always been a good thing to be a part of the community.
What is your best memory from being in Calgary UX?
I have many fond memories of being involved with Calgary UX. I think for me, just being a part of this community and meeting new people and that connection to the industry is probably the biggest thing that I get out of it. I think my favorite times were back doing the book clubs when we'd hang out at the Hop and Brew and sort of a dark corner of the pub and just talk about a book or whatever the topic was of the day. And then as people would trickle in, there would always be this sort of looking around and is that the people that I'm here to hang out with? Because nobody really knew anybody at that point in time. So it was all just really kind of getting to know each other and become familiar with it, and then starting to grow and develop together.
I think one was, so when we were trying to organize events, one of our biggest challenges was finding a venue. And I can remember one time we had organized, we were doing things called rapid fires. And what we were trying to do with those was make it less intimidating for people to come and speak, because they were small little speaking engagements. You weren't the main, the main thing that people are coming to see. There were multiple people, so it just took a little bit of pressure off. And so we'd organized, I think, 3 key speakers, and we'd found a venue. And we found out, I'm not sure if it was the day before or 2 days before, that the venue wouldn't allow us to use any audio visual media things. So we had to let all of our presenters know that they couldn't use, presentation decks. They had to do it in some way that was not technological. And it worked out really well. I talk about creativity when you've got when you're put when boundaries are put around you. And I think that's a lot about UX, is you have to work within some sort of boundary. And so I can remember the 3 speakers. I can remember them sitting around these pool tables. And so we sort of there were 2 pool tables, and there's a speaker on one side, and all the other people were sitting around. And one of the speakers, I can't remember, he brought a child's toy. I wanted to say it was a whack-a-mole, or it was something that was a construction building toy. And it lent itself really well to the metaphor that he was talking about, and the project example that he was talking about. And another one brought a flip chart. And so they held up a flip chart, their slide deck, and flipped through this flip chart. And the other one, I can't remember what the third person did, but it actually worked out really well, and it created a more engaging experience than what we typically see with a screen and everybody sitting and somebody. So we carried it on. I think we did that again a couple of times, and we took that limitation and we gave it to our speakers, and they ran with it. And I think that was a nice happy accident, and talks a lot about UX.
Best memories are tough. I don't like to pick a best, but I will for the sake of this. I'd say, looking back, when I first started attending Calgary UX, a lot of the events were sort of more focused on a UX book club, which meant that we choose a book from the UX canon, some of the big titles at the times, or new books that had just been released. And we'd all read it or read parts of it, depending on who you were and how you like to engage. And then come together at either a pub or whatever space was available. Sometimes we met at the old Hop and Brew, which I think now is maybe called something like the Civic Tavern. But it's an old house, and we'd sort of sit around and make a little talking table and have a beer and have a conversation. And one of my favorite memories was not necessarily the beer or the Hop and Brew, but the fact that we would all get together and sort of digest together what we had read, and unpack certain things about processes or new ideas that were being introduced. And a lot of it was just about finding our place. UX has continued to redefine itself. And at that point in time, we were really just trying to figure out what was the best thing to do, because everyone was coming from different disciplines, and it was just great to engage and share ideas and share our learnings together and just keep evolving. So I'd say, although it's sort of nostalgic and a little bit nerdy, I really enjoyed the UX book clubs and the conversations that we had around that. And all the people that brought unique perspectives and unique readings of the same material, and to have a really rich and again, vibrant conversation.
You probably hear me say a lot of same things a lot here, but a lot of it is, to me, that social part of getting together with folks. Again, we have a lot of good presentations and activities, but I find that being able to just talk with one another and find out what people are doing and find out what's happening and what other people are interested in is kind of the big part of that. There's one time, I think it was back in 2013 or something like that, we had a design slam, I think we called it. And so it was put on by a couple other folks that were doing some organizing back then. And yeah, we had a bunch of folks coming together that some were experienced, some not as much, but everybody were trying to working on these design problems that were just kind of help practice through that. And it was fun to just kind of take that on. We used to have what's called boozer experiences. So that was just for a little while. That's all that Calgary UX had going for a little while was these boozer experience zones. And that was just to have those social get-togethers. And I think it was pretty good to have.
What was UX back then, and what is it like now?
You know, at the core, UX really hasn't changed that much from then until now. The tools we use may have changed, whether it's like Visio or the problems we're trying to solve have changed as well, but the mindset hasn't. And it's all about crafting user-centric solutions that are trying to solve whatever it is that they want to do, while ensuring that we're meeting the business goals and objectives. And then, of course, within the confines of the technology capabilities and constraints available to that particular project. So I think the way I'd say things have changed or evolved since then is that UX is not such a rogue activity anymore. It's more widely accepted. It's highly sought after now for sure, and companies are recognizing the value that UX offers them, and it's a way to differentiate themselves. And so I think it's just become more popular and more part of what good companies need in order to be successful. And so what that really means is there's a lot of places where it's evolved from a UX team of one to a larger team, and that could be 5 or 6 people, 10 to 12, or 20 plus.
My background comes from industrial design, and I think in both UX and industrial design, it's a lot about understanding the problem and being really clear about the problem or the opportunity and the circumstance that you're designing for, both the intended and optimal circumstance, and also the contrary, or the circumstance that isn't ideal. And so I don't think that has changed. I think our tools have changed for sure. Back then, I think we divided our roles a bit differently. There was information architects, there were visual designers, and there was UX designers. I think now some of those roles have become a bit more blended again. People know about it and its impact a lot more than they did back then. We see that through technology companies, or companies that their main purpose is technology, and we also see that in organizations where their main industry is something else, but technology really supports them. And so I think the big change we've probably seen is the understanding of the impact a user experience can have in an organization, that is both like intended technology or technologies in support of the rest of its industry. I think that's one of the biggest changes I've seen, is you're not trying to sell it as much as you are just trying to do the best you can with what you have.
Today, it feels like user experience has gone from kind of a narrow banded focus that sort of originated with usability and was focused on websites and enterprise software and things like that, and like taking a bigger piece of the pie and a bigger piece of the pie and a bigger piece of the pie. So incorporating service design and thinking about the end-to-end life cycle of the user's engagement with a brand or an organization, scaling that out further and thinking about how it fits into service design in government, right? Thinking about how that expands further into the experience of being a citizen. And like, it just sort of has started to diffuse and permeate the different areas of all industries and all cultures, and trying to find a new home. And so as a user experience practitioner today, I'm like, the options are endless. I think it's everywhere, and it's about finding a niche, finding a vocabulary that makes sense to you, and finding a way through bringing that human-centered lens into just about any subdiscipline that you can find out there. So, extra short version of what I think it is. UX has evolved to be an underlayer of just about everything. And instead of being its own designated discipline, I think we're starting to see the behaviors and the patterns and the processes that we use just embedded within all sorts of things.
I think back then it was still people that were practicing user experience work kind of knew what all it was, but outside of that, if people heard of UX or user experience, it maybe wasn't as familiar with what user experience is. I think more people outside of the people practicing it actually are kind of aware of really what it is. I remember some meetups in the past where like there's folks from startups coming, there's other folks that aren't necessarily practicing user experience. And when I was talking with them, it was kind of more clear that they were looking for someone to make things look good versus actually make things work well and understand people. But I find that's shifted now. So back in 10 years ago, it was still more of maybe I don't know what user experience is, and maybe I'm trying to learn about it, or maybe I'm looking for something different and don't really know what I'm looking for. But now people, when they're looking for user experience work, have a better idea, and you don't have to explain what it is as much.
What does the Calgary UX community mean to you?
The Calgary UX community to me means an opportunity to connect with like-minded individuals who are also focused on a passion to grow and develop as a practitioner and just invested in everything that it goes into making up great experiences for our customers. I think it's also a great opportunity for us to bring awareness to all the great work that's happening in the city.
Calgary UX to me is about building connections. It's about being really curious, or the people coming with curiosity around people, different processes, different approaches, and ideas. And then I think it's really about being curious. So curious and coming with that intent of learning, and the people there being authentic around sharing and meeting and making those connections.
That's a good question. It's meant, I think, a few different things to me over the years. At first, it was a place where I could try and find like-minded folks to sort of push me and help me grow, and it was the beginning of a foundation of finding a network of people in Calgary in a new place that I just moved to, and trying to find my home, I guess, which was really nice. I think that I don't want to get too nostalgic or indulgent into it, but it was welcoming, and it was a nice opportunity to meet people and connect and sort of build some foundations in Calgary. So, it started as something that was an intro to the city as well. And over the years, I think it's evolved. It's been a really good place for dialogue, growth, learning, shared experiences. And I think maybe at the end of the day, for me, it's an opportunity to think and see how other people are engaging with the Calgary UX community in general. So not just Calgary UX, but user experience as it exists within Calgary. And getting a sense of other opportunities. What's sort of emerging within the city in terms of different niches adopting a user-centered approach that might be of interest or appeal. So that might be career networking, or finding other opportunities to engage as a consultant or contractor. But at the end of the day, I also see it as a really valuable learning experience, giving up-and-coming folks a chance to meet some other experienced people, getting to share war stories and learn from that and continue to evolve their craft, and a way for people to kind of set a level set and set a playing field that everyone can engage with. And 1 year experience, 10 years, 20 years, doesn't matter. You're able to have a conversation together and take in new things and new ideas and share and explore together. That's what I see Calgary UX as these days.
Yeah, for me, it's that social side of things. I think it's a great, like what Lewis has been able to do here in the last couple of years, especially, to really elevate it to the professional side about having being able to have all these events and partnerships and so on, which is really awesome. But even the last meetup we just had too, having that social side of it, being able to talk with others that isn't necessarily on the project you're working on and stuff like that, and just have that camaraderie around that, around everybody sharing this kind of world of UX that we share, is just a great part of that. It's a bit harder to do on the virtual calls. I think what we did last week was really good, but being in person is going to be good again as well at some point in the future.
What's the best thing you got from being part of this community?
Yeah, I think the best thing for me that I've gotten from being a part of this community is the peer-based learning. It's an awesome way to crowdsource kind of tips and tricks of dealing with developers, product owners. There's always these really stimulating conversations around hot topics. And to me, the best part is that it's all about supporting each other and making sure that there's this continuous growth and development happening here. And really, I think the strength of the community lies in the participation and contribution of every individual member. So it's sort of like that collective community is where the strength is here.
Definitely the connections, the people. And I think being part of this community as it grew and as we tried out different things, it wasn't just this community, but there was connections with Edmonton's user experience group, there was connections, so YEG, there was connections with Vancouver's Vanu E user experience group, trying to figure out how we could create some synergies with what they were trying to do or learn from what they were trying to do. And then even Lethbridge, we had connections with people in Lethbridge, figuring out how we could build community across sort of more southern Alberta. So yeah, I think it was really about connections and people.
The biggest thing that I think I've taken away is getting other people's perspectives. It's been a really interesting community or environment to explore new ideas with. I like to do some of my own thinking and evolution on my own, and then it becomes like a test bed of like-minded people who can evaluate, critique, judge, like positively or constructively judge an idea or a concept and give feedback on that. And I think that's something that you don't always get within the same workplace, within your sort of closer network at the place that you work, or even online, right? Like you can put a thing out online, you'll get feedback, commentary, and whatnot, but it's not always as rich as a like-minded person or someone with similar background being able to evaluate, critique, and sort of help you evolve that idea or that thinking. So most important thing or best thing I've gotten from this community is feedback. I think feedback for me to grow and evolve as a UX practitioner, and feedback for me to evolve my thinking and clarity around what we do and how I can engage with that, and feedback around who's in the community. So now I have the responsibility of hiring, and I get to see what up-and-comers are interested in, what they're looking for, how they want to shape their role in their career going forward. And hearing that from the community is super valuable in sort of understanding what's appealing, what's interesting, and whether or not the role aligns with the demand that's in the market. So I think all in all, it's been a wicked resource for getting feedback on a number of different fronts, and a very constructive community to be a part of.
Yeah, I think, again, just as I said, I'll probably repeat this a lot, but that social aspect, and knowing that, hey, there's different people having the same challenges that you have in doing the work, but also being able to understand and find out some new approaches, some that's not necessarily, hey, this is not something that's in a book or something, it's other things that people have tried, especially locally. And yeah, just to, kind of have that learning and making sure there's, I guess that, what is it called? Sharing the pain, I guess, too, you know? Like when you're in sure. Frustrations, it's the same kind of thing too. There's the, hey, this is the new techniques and stuff we're trying, but also like, you're not the only one in the boat when you're, trying out some things that are not always working for you. And that assurance, no, this is the right thing that's actually worked in other places. And so keep it up, kind of thing.
What advice would you give to newcomers about getting into and being successful in this field?
Yeah, I think the best advice that I can give to any newcomer, or even as a refresher for people that are more seasoned practitioners, is to commit to lifelong learning. Never stop being curious. That continuous learning is an integral part of growing and developing not only your skill set, but also your mindset. And so just always be curious.
I connections and finding those networks is, in my career, it has been critical. I can think of, as I said, like some of the most pivotal moments have come from the connections I've built through these types of groups. And so getting involved, it gives you a chance in small ways, and then and maybe this is some advice for this group too, is to continue to figure out how you can remove some of the barriers to entry for speaking or sharing ideas, and to continue to find ways to do that, and whether that's in the types of groups you're hosting, that we have things for students that are coming in, where maybe it's more about design slams where you get to work beside somebody else, or what else? If we had things for like people who haven't spoken at conferences before, how do you make it easy for them to? This is such a supportive community, and I know, although it was intimidating for a lot of people to come and speak, I think the network and getting to know all the folks ahead of time, it felt like a safe place to trial ideas, and in small little ways. Like, I'm going to try this speaking thing out and see how it goes. I'm going to be able to ask some feedback from some people that I got to know at the community, and then maybe I could evolve it and go and try it somewhere else at a company or wherever else you wanted to do it. So,
one piece of advice I would give to newcomers and seasoned veterans is stay curious. Stay curious. Yeah, there's nothing more valuable than continuing to evolve your practice, your understanding, the areas around you. The things that are adjacent to us or seem completely different actually inform what we do as a practice. And so curiosity will take you leaps and bounds ahead of anybody with all the top-notch skills. Your curiosity and demand for knowledge and demand for new experiences and demand for understanding and clarity is far more valuable than being able to use Figma.
And always be curious about finding out new things. You can dive into a lot of different subjects and learn a lot of different things, but it's still like understanding how, when it hits the road and kind of the work side, it's like, okay, I heard this is kind of what you're supposed to do, but this is how it ends up working, because there's always that balance with business and money and timelines and everything that does happen. So there's concessions. So how do you actually balance that? And it's still something I'm learning to actually get better at still. But saying like, I want to see this, like, I've understood that this is a better way to go about this. And also when we talk to people, this is what is kind of what they're looking for. But when there's other kind of stakeholders in the process, those things are just part of that balance versus everything. So it's still saying, did I leave that better than I left it, is kind of my mantra a little bit. So you might have this awesome experience you think is going to work out, but there's still that whole balance. Don't get discouraged by that, because there's still improvements that can come down the road, and it doesn't have to be all at once. But from a professional development perspective, is just keep talking to people, always be curious, and always remember it's about the people.
What do you see for the future of Calgary UX?
I think the future of Calgary UX needs to be rooted in the fact that we have a really vibrant community here. Our tech sector continues to thrive, and I think that's really exciting. It's opening up more opportunities as more prominent companies come in and push some of the current companies out of their comfort zone and really kind of be disruptors. So back to sort of answering the future of Calgary UX, I think to me it's that we got to continue to keep nurturing the collective learning, the knowledge sharing, and supporting each other. To me, it brings to mind, I think it's a proverb that's like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you need to go together. And I think that all speaks to that community aspect, and that's what I think I want to see. I would love to see the future of Calgary UX continue to drive in that direction.
So I would say what I see right now is momentum and possibility, and knowing the community in Calgary, there's a lot of people with a lot of experience to tap into, and so possibility. I would say I see a lot of possibility with Calgary UX in the future.
I think Calgary UX will continue to be a channel or a connector that helps expose these different disciplines to people, give them access to the space or the organizations that are growing in those domains, and help to support the newcomers or the Calgarians or the remote attendees to the different events, to make those connections, to see what's possible and to find their way to bring their skill set and their practice into these new and emergent domains and some existing domains. But I'm really mostly excited and hope that Calgary UX can help carve a path into those spaces that will desperately require a different way of thinking as they start to find their footing and take hold.
Well, I think, again, what Lewis has been able to do in the last couple of years is continuing that kind of thing, is making sure that there's these connections and the partnerships like that was one thing, and even the funding too that that Lewis has been able to get has been really great. I remember in the earlier days, that was one thing. You always need a bit of money to keep some things going, and that's also helpful. But I think in the just increasing those partnerships and growing the community. So helping folks that are newer to the profession and so on, just get a bit better chances and opportunities to actually do some things they might not be able to do at work. So having some more professional development opportunities as well, with hands-on kind of things. I think that's another things I'm looking forward to. Like Lewis and I have been talking about inclusivity a lot more recently, which is more kind of look at inclusive testing. So I think it's another aspect of how we can do our work, and I think that's going to be another thing that will help and provide opportunities for Calgary UX folks as well.
What developments within the UX community of Calgary are you the most excited for?
I think the most exciting thing for me around this UX community, and it's developing forward, and this, keep in mind, this is probably skewed by COVID, is about getting back to in-person events, that networking and conversations in real life, and not just looking at a screen all day, as much as a lot of the work that we do is screen-based. Sometimes it's nice to actually be a person in real life. So I think that's one aspect, but I think the other thing that is going to be important for us as a community is to make sure that we're open and embracing a lot of the new technology that's coming up, and these things that are going to be disruptors more than they already are. And there's already some of the things that are there, such as augmented reality or blockchain or AI. And it's really about us understanding these technologies and figuring out how do we bridge the gap between humans and that technology. We're really translators and trying to unlock and enable humans to do whatever it is they want to do. And technology can be that tool to make that possible. And I think that's something that we also means that we need to focus more of our attention on accessibility, diversity, and inclusion, because it's understanding all those things that make us human that are going to be important for us to really take advantage of all those technologies that are available to us.
I think just to continue to see it thrive. It's had Calgary UX, as somebody involved in organizing, we had some hard times where we were trying to figure out how do we meet what people are looking for, how do we host these events, and times where the committee was getting a little burnt out. Like, we just kept hitting walls with venues was one of our biggest pain points, and figuring out how to find money to just get those off the ground. And so knowing the history of the ebb and flow of it, the camaraderie that kept us going, the challenges and the frustrations, what is so cool is to see what's happening now, and that I think some of those frictions, people have found ways to smooth them out or diminish the friction so that the team can really focus on what's important, which is creating great experiences, finding great events, and not so much the logistics. So I would say just to see it keep building. I think that's super exciting where it's at and where it's going.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I think seeing Calgary UX as like a connective tissue and bringing different organizations together, bringing different people and expertise groups together. I would say that some of the partnerships that Calgary UX has started to engage with like General Assembly, or maybe partnering with UX Edmonton, or even reaching more broadly into the global community and bringing folks in for talks and for workshops and whatever the case may be going forward. I think that is something that I'm really stoked about. Calgary UX started as you remember the UX book club that I was mentioning was like 8 people huddled around a table, co-located, talking about a topic. But even the current situation has expanded our horizons and our thinking about how we can connect with people digitally, remotely, and in a distributed fashion. So I see Calgary UX expanding the Calgary UX thinking into the global space and getting feedback and getting connections with practitioners, experts, alternative thinkers from different domains, and continuing to evolve that. So, all of this ties back to the connections that Calgary UX is making. And I think that it is a really, really sort of foundational resource for UXers in Calgary, looking to understand what else is out there, understand their own domain locally, and to make those big, broad connections into the industry. I also know that Calgary is growing as a technology hub. And whether you're here and it's new startups or more established companies growing or looking to put down roots here, there's a bit of a change happening that's coming through. And whether, again, you're sort of physically located in Calgary or you're part of a distributed team that works as Calgary as a hub, I think there's lots of opportunity for Calgary UX to evolve and make sure that that community gets enriched and finds ways into those small niche startups or the large established organizations to make sure that the Calgary talent pool can continue to grow and we draw new people here. It's like people coming out of school are looking for jobs, looking for opportunities, looking for that really interesting, creative first experience where they can get in and get messy and get dirty and figure everything out and panic and go through all that range of emotions. And Calgary is going to be a place where you can actually offer that more than having, say, someone come to school, graduate, and have to go find a career opportunity somewhere else. So it'd be great to see this community continue to grow and have Calgary UX be a facilitator for making the connections with the small organizations and the large organizations that are really establishing themselves here now.
I think one thing is that inclusive approach. But I think there's also, in Calgary, I think there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of smart people in the city, user experience folks, but a whole bunch of other folks as well. And there's actually a strong entrepreneurial hub and tech hub and so on. And I think that kind of can be a great driver, especially as people now understand what user experience is about a bit more than they didn't in the past. There's a lot more opportunities here that can, I think, be pretty fruitful. I think in general, the city itself is trying to go that direction, right? Is trying to have more of that, be more of that, not just oil and gas, but oil and gas and other things, right? And I think there's a great space for that with user experience work.